Welcome everyone to Registrar Corp's client webinar entitled Fast Facts on FSMA, a three-part series. We will begin shortly. Again, I'd like to welcome everyone to Registrar Corp's client webinar entitled Fast Facts on FSMA, a three-part series. My name is Coley Anderson, and I'm Industry and Government Relations Director at Registrar Corp, and your moderator today for our presentation on the Voluntary Qualified Importer Program, otherwise known as VQIP. Our presenter today is David Linares, and before we begin, I'm going to give you some information on David. David Linares is Vice President at Registrar Corp. Mr. Linares is a graduate of the University of Virginia and has worked for nearly 22 years in FDA-regulated industries in the U.S. and in Europe. Mr. Linares has conducted seminars on U.S. Food and Drug Administration regulations for food and beverage, drugs, medical devices, cosmetics for trade associations, trade shows, and governments in more than 30 countries around the world. He served as technical expert for the U.S. Food and Drug Administration's Foreign Facility Registration Verification Program, operated by FDA's Division of Field Investigations. He's co-founder of Registrar Corp in 2003 and is based in Registrar Corp's head office in Hampton, Virginia. In addition, we have on our panel Brendan Sampson. Brendan Sampson holds a Master's of Business Administration and Marketing in Private Enterprise for the College of William & Mary. Mr. Sampson is based in Registrar Corp's Hampton, Virginia office and serves as manager of the FDA Compliance Monitor Department. Mr. Sampson oversees the development and sales of Registrar Corp's FDA Compliance Monitor, a tool that monitors the compliance status of FDA-regulated facilities around the world. We again have quite a large crowd today, but our intent is to keep this less than an hour to allow ample time for questions. To submit a written question, you will see a toolbar on the left side of your screen with a button that says Q&A. Simply click on that to submit a written question. You may ask questions at any time during the presentation, although we will be addressing those questions at the end of the session. So let's begin. David?
Thank you, Coley. Good afternoon, everyone, and again, welcome. We're going to start off today to just give a quick overview again of the Food Safety Modernization Act, a review of the Preventive Control Rule and the Foreign Supplier Verification Program, but the main presentation today will be on the Voluntary Qualified Importer Program. So again, the Food Safety Modernization Act, this was signed by President Obama into law on January 4th, 2011. FDA has called it the most sweeping reform of our food safety laws in 70 years. The act proposes many changes for not only industry, but the FDA in terms of power to enforce rules. In essence, it's a move from reactive to proactive, science-based methods to prevent foodborne illnesses rather than to simply respond to them. Touch on the progress of FSMA. We've shown this slide previously. If you are with us, it has the major rules and their publication dates. FDA finally made significant progress on the specifics of the Food Safety Modernization Act in 2015, publishing rules for preventive controls, produce safety, the Foreign Supplier Verification Program, third-party auditor program, and issuing proposed rule guidance on the Voluntary Qualified Importer Program. Two additional rules, the sanitary transport and intentional adulteration, will be released in the months ahead. FDA has also indicated that various guidance documents will be issued for most of the rules, and those documents will help to clarify details included in the rules. We also know that towards the end of 2015, the 2016 fiscal budget was passed, granting FDA $2.72 billion in discretionary funding. And within this total, food safety activities aimed at implementing FSMA were increased by $104.5 million. So theoretically, FDA now not only has the rules on the books, but actually has money to implement the rules. FDA has indicated that the initial phase of implementation will be a focus on education. And given the varied timeframes for compliance, as well as the numerous exemptions, it is likely FDA will focus mostly on education versus enforcement for many months ahead. Regarding the preventive control rule, we spoke about this on Tuesday. For those who were here with us, Russell Statman gave a presentation and spoke about the preventive control rule. Under this rule, most food manufacturers, unless exempt, will have to develop a HACCP-like food safety plan, which includes a written supply chain program to approve suppliers and verify their compliance with food safety standards, which may include preventive controls for certain hazards. The largest companies out there will have to comply with this rule by September of this year. And yesterday, Edwin Velez Rivera, our Director of Food Safety, spoke about the Foreign Supplier Verification Program. Under FSMA, companies importing from foreign suppliers must establish an actual program which will have a written plan on approving suppliers. This includes looking at the food safety history of the supplier, determine appropriate verification activities, which may include on-site audits, sampling and testing of raw materials or ingredients, conduct the verification activities, carry out corrective actions, which may include discontinuing use of a problematic supplier, and document these activities. Here are some examples of various verification activities importers could utilize to appropriately verify their suppliers' compliance with FDA regulations. If the risk-based analysis reveals a hazard that presents a serious adverse health consequence or death to humans or animals, what the FDA calls SOCOTA, then the default verification activity would be an on-site audit. It's worthwhile mentioning again that such an audit could be conducted by you, the importer, or by a third party, the manufacturer, or that you hire. Other methods include sampling and testing and reviewing food safety history of a supplier, including FDA refusals, import alerts, inspection classifications, and warning letters. Let's talk a little bit about who must comply with this particular rule. The importer is the one who needs to comply, but it's important to note that if there is no U.S. owner or consignee at entry, the importer is then the U.S. agent or representative of the foreign owner or consignee as confirmed in a signed statement of consent. So for example, a retailer may actually be submitted as the consignee for an import. And even though in the past they had few direct FDA regulations to worry about, as consignee, they will now need to comply with the Foreign Supplier Verification Program. Let's talk a little bit about who's exempt from the Foreign Supplier Verification Program, and I have a list up there you can see. As you can see from the slide, a number of activities qualify a firm for exemption. Large industries covered by the exemption include the seafood, juice, and alcoholic beverage industries. And here are some additional exemptions as well. LACF, low acid canned food products, includes raw ingredients as well, but they are exempt only for microbiological hazards. Very small importers, suppliers, less than $1 million per year averaged over the last 3 years. Farms that are not covered, less than $25,000 and not subject to the produce safety rule. Qualified facility, less than $1 million a year in sales, mostly to consumers. And food facilities in countries with an equivalent food safety system, which for now is only New Zealand. Now let's move on. That was a brief recap of the Preventive Control Rule and the Foreign Supplier Verification Rule. Now let's talk about the Voluntary Qualified Importer Program, or VQIP, that may allow participants access to a so-called green lane, meaning faster review of your imports. Some of you may be familiar with CTPAT, the Customs Trade Partnership Against Terrorism program. VQIP may be most simply described as FDA's version of CTPAT. What exactly does it promise? Well, theoretically, the promise is expedited entry. FDA claims they will only detain shipments for cause. So, for example, if it's a Sakota product. Expedited lab analysis in case of for-cause detentions, a dedicated help desk, and an option to be listed on the FDA websites as a VQIP importer. So how will it work? In the most simple terms, importers will have to enroll in the program, submit individual products for review and inclusion, and pay a user fee. Let's first discuss who can be eligible to participate in VQIP. Obviously, you must be a food importer to participate in VQIP. You don't, however, have to be based in the US. What I mean by this is that a foreign manufacturer or other entity could act as a VQIP importer for purposes of this program. The importer need not be the CBP, Customs and Border Protection, importer of record. At time of entry, for customs purposes, there is an importer of record and consignee. But under this program, there will also be an optional VQIP importer, which again could be your foreign supplier. There are some benefits to having your foreign supplier serve in this role. Namely, you could foist the program fee off to them. They would have to do the paperwork for participation. And if they are not only selling products to you, but to others as well, then there is some logic in them wanting to participate in the program as well. FDA will look at the applicant's compliance history going back 3 years. Have you had recalls? Have you had reportable food registry incidences? Have you had an import refusal? Is your supplier on an import alert? Another requirement is that the VQIP importer will have to obtain a DUNS number from the private company Dun & Bradstreet. Many of you may be familiar with D&B because they have long provided financial ratings or reviews of companies. FDA has engaged D&B to provide FDA-regulated industries with DUNS numbers, which FDA will then require at time of entry. According to FDA and D&B, DUNS numbers are free, although in our experience, we have seen some of their overseas offices upselling other services when providing a company with their DUNS number. VQIP importers will also have to engage a customs broker who does paperless filings and has a passing FDA filer evaluation. FDA actually evaluates licensed customs brokers based on the errors they make. So you want to be sure your broker has a passing grade from FDA. There's a database on FDA's website where you can see the status of each licensed customs broker. Finally, to participate in VQIP, you may not import food subject to an import alert or Class 1 recall. So don't waste your time submitting a particular product from a supplier who is subject to an import alert. Very important note as well, under VQIP, you submit individual products for FDA review. You are ineligible to participate if any of your products you import are subject to an import alert, not just those that you submit for enrollment under the program. So from a practical standpoint, what this means is that if you have 10 products enrolled under VQIP and 5 other products from the same supplier are not enrolled, and one of those 5 products is subject to import alert, then you are disqualified from having that supplier in your program. Now that is a relatively easy thing to determine prior to enrollment, but if an import alert is put in place during your enrollment period, then that could be quite painful, meaning you've spent time and money to have a supplier in your program only to have them later disqualified. So here are some additional eligibility requirements. Your firm and/or other entities related to the food must not be subject to an ongoing FDA administrative or judicial action or have a history of significant non-compliances relating to food safety. So for example, if your foreign supplier had an inspection and FDA classified that inspection as official action indicated, or OAI, which means it was in essence a bad inspection, then you would not want to enroll any products from that supplier under the program. Additionally, participants will have to be inspected and certified by FDA. Furthermore, part of the program requires development and implementation of a quality assurance program, which I'll go into shortly. And then lastly, no CB penalties, and also finally, you'll have to pay the VQIP user fee each year before October 1st. Under VQIP, an importer may obtain food from any foreign supplier as long as that foreign supplier has a current food facility certification issued by a third-party auditor or certification body accredited by FDA. This third-party auditor rule was published last November, with more guidance on this expected in 2016. Essentially, the certification means that a facility meets the applicable requirements of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. The foreign facility must recertify annually. What does that mean? It means not only is there the cost of the user fee for VQIP, but there is also the cost of an accredited third-party audit and certification. As a quick explanation on accreditation, as part of the Food Safety Modernization Act, FDA will develop a system to recognize accreditation bodies, which will then accredit certification bodies, which will audit and issue certifications for foreign facilities and foods during a regulatory audit. These certifications will be used for two purposes. The first one is for VQIP, and the second one is for admissibility of a food subject to a risk-based determination by FDA. So this would be a food that has encountered a particular situation, incident in a country that FDA has determined has caused significant risk. Importers will not generally be required to obtain certification. So how is it envisioned that the VQIP application process will work? You submit a notice of intent to participate for the next fiscal year for FDA, October to September, between January and May of each year. You submit your application, which has to include your quality assurance program, product labels for each food you are applying for VQIP participation, in addition to food identification information for each food, which would include an FDA product code. You must also include the DUNS number for each non-applicant, meaning all of the foreign facilities that you plan to import food from. Lastly, you have to pay the FDA program fee each year before October 1st. For the first year, FDA estimates that the fee will be $16,400, and this fee will change each year based on FDA's cost to run the program, which will be largely based on how many participants sign up. You must resubmit your VQIP application every year and pay the new fee, but you don't have to resubmit your quality assurance program again unless it has changed. So here are some of the items required to be included in the quality assurance program. Let's start with the corporate quality policy statement. This relates to food safety and security, organization structure and functional responsibilities, basically who is who will implement, monitor, etc. the program. Food safety policies and procedures. These are written procedures for maintaining foreign supplier certification, communication with FDA, corrective actions, etc. Food defense plan. This is something new, which FDA has proposed as a rule already, called protecting food against intentional adulteration. The final rule is to be published by FDA by May 31st of this year. Next, we have the training for VQIP employees, implementation procedures, and record-keeping procedures. So those are the elements of a quality assurance plan. Once you have submitted the application, FDA will review it, and if approved, then FDA will conduct an inspection of the applicant. So if you are the applicant here in the US, then FDA will inspect you. If it is a foreign applicant, then FDA will travel overseas to inspect them. The application may be amended during the year to add or remove a food label that's already in your VQIP or the foreign supplier of a food, but not add additional products not yet in your program for that year. Additionally, you may replace a foreign supplier during the year for a food already in your VQIP. Talk a little bit about what happens after approval once you're in the program. FDA does, or has, I should say, of course, built into the program a way to revoke a participant's enrollment in VQIP. So if FDA determines during your enrollment that you are not meeting the eligibility requirements or that you're involved in smuggling or fraudulent activities, they could revoke your approval to participate. In addition to losing the money that has been paid, FDA will inform other agencies. Thus, an importer could potentially lose their CTPAT benefits as well if they participate in that program. So let's talk now a little bit about the pros and cons of this program. What are the pros and cons? Well, on the pro side, the program could indeed function as FDA envisions, and your entries could be expedited. This could save you demurrage or other storage-related fees and allow you to get products to market faster. So that's a real plus that for many companies would equal significant money. On the con side, you're voluntarily telling FDA a lot more about your products and your suppliers, including having them inspect you and submitting labeling to them. As it stands now, most of you will know, food labels are not actually submitted to FDA. In addition, if an import alert pops up during your participation, that product or supplier could be made ineligible to continue in the program, even though you have done the work, paid the FDA program fee, had an FDA inspection, and had a third-party audit of the foreign supplier. And of course, again, on the pro side is that annual fee of approximately $16,000. I believe a decision as to if you participate or not is one that should be discussed not only with your suppliers, since it affects them, but also with your team internally at your company. A common theme throughout our three presentations this week is this aspect of FDA requiring companies to monitor the compliance of their suppliers. The Food Safety Modernization Act requires firms to monitor the compliance under the Preventive Control Rule, the Foreign Supplier Verification Program, and now under the Voluntary Qualified Importer Program as well. Their concept with this, the idea behind requiring this, is quite simple. You should use the FDA's data to check the status of your trade partner to be sure they aren't in violation of FDA rules. There are a number of ways that FDA publishes information regarding regulatory compliance issues online for the world to see. Things like warning letters, import refusals, recalls, import alerts, inspection classifications, and other data available through Freedom of Information Act requests, such as inspection results, or which are also known as Form 483s. And as you might guess, FDA doesn't generally publish good news, so your option is to go out there and scan multiple FDA databases before purchases, which is time-consuming, tedious, and retroactive, not proactive. Another option, and this is our sales pitch, is Registrar Corp has developed a great tool to monitor yourself or your suppliers. We constantly scan all of FDA's databases for updates, put that into a simple compliance dashboard, alert you to any changes in status, and help you meet the documentation requirements of the Food Safety Modernization Act. As a client of Registrar, you should already have access to monitor yourself for free, but if you would like to monitor others, we do offer unlimited monitoring with a 60-day free trial, so feel free to throw in some companies to monitor. It's a cheap way to comply with the monitoring requirements and can help you avoid detentions as well as avoid problematic suppliers. So that is my conclusion of the presentation part. I'll turn it back over to Coley Anderson. We'll be able to open it up for questions.
Thank you, David, for that excellent presentation. I'm sure our importers attendees will find that information very helpful. Before we open up to the question and answer session, I want to remind attendees that you should see on your screen a quick questionnaire asking for your input about future webinar topics. Take a moment, please, and answer that. As a reminder, to submit a written question, you will see a toolbar on the left-hand side of your screen with a button that says Q&A. Simply click on that button and submit a question. If you think of a question after the webinar is over, we encourage you to submit your questions via email. Send that to webinar@registrarcorp.com or info@registrarcorp.com, and we will do our best to provide you with a prompt response. So now we have some questions in, and we're going to go ahead and take the first one. And the first question is, will all slides from the series be emailed to everyone who registered? Yes, and I can answer that myself. We don't need David or Brendan for that. We will email the presentation to anyone that's attending. Okay, next, we have another question in. It is, can you review how this relates to FSVP? We're going to let David answer that question.
All right, thank you. Sure, happy to. How VQIP relates to FSVP. Again, FSVP applies to all importers importing food into the U.S. So if you import food into the U.S. and you're not exempt under FSVP, you've got to comply with the rule. VQIP, however, it's a voluntary program for importers that want to streamline their imports into the U.S. and requires that all your foreign suppliers be certified by a third-party certification body, not just approved under your supply chain program like under the Foreign Supplier Verification Program. So that is the difference. Again, one is required unless exempt, and the other is completely voluntary.
Okay, now we have yet another question in. Am I required to comply with FSVP if I wish to be in this program? And I'm going to go ahead and give that to Brendan.
So, no, the FSVP or HACCP importer may be different from the VQIP importer, but in most cases, they'll be one and the same. An example, a foreign VQIP importer not located in the U.S. cannot be a FSVP or a HACCP importer because a FSVP or HACCP importer must be located in the U.S. In submitting your application, the FDA may ask for information of the FSVP or HACCP importer for your food.
Thank you, Brendan. Okay, yet another question in. We're going to go ahead and pull that one off here, and there it is. Okay, what info would I need to submit at entry with each VQIP food? And I'm going to go ahead and give that to David.
Okay, thank you, Coley. What importer would I need to submit with each VQIP food? One of the things that will have to be submitted is what FDA calls an Affirmation of Compliance code and the VQIP application number to identify the entry as a VQIP food. And it's important eventually when this program is in place that you're going to want to make sure that all of that data matches the information in your VQIP application. FDA has specified that, outlined that, made it very clear. So again, there'll be this Affirmation of Compliance code and your VQIP application number, as well as I mentioned in the presentation, the requirement for DUNS numbers.
Thank you, David. I think we have another question coming down here. Let me see, they're pulling it off, and it's right over there. Okay, here we go. going to read that over here. Yes, here it goes. Sorry. Okay, so the next question is, should I sign up for CTPAT if I'm thinking about doing VQIP? I'm going to go ahead and let...
Brendan, you want to take that? Brendan.
I can take that one.
Okay, we're going to let Brendan take that, answer that question. Here we go.
Okay, well, FDA has stated that it's not required to participate in CTPAT, but they have also said they encourage VQIP importers to participate in the CTPAT program to ensure they receive the entry benefits provided by U.S. Customs and Border Protection under this program.
So, this is David. In essence, what they're saying there is, if you're going to be in the VQIP program, you should seriously consider CTPAT, because if you're held up at Customs, then you really haven't gotten much benefit out of the VQIP program either. So again, both are voluntary, but certainly worth considering.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Brendan. We have quite a few questions coming down here, another one coming through. And again, just a reminder that if you submit a written question, you will see a toolbar on the left-hand side of your screen with a button that says Q&A, and simply click that and submit your question. Here goes, yep, here's another one. Okay. Are there any other benefits besides the ones you discussed in the presentation? I'm going to go ahead and let Brendan answer that question.
Well, David covered most of the significant benefits during the presentation, but one thing that definitely comes to mind. So if you come under a for-cause examination, the FDA will allow the VQIP importer to choose the location of the sampling. If exportation is necessary, the FDA will also assist in dealing with the Customs and Border Protection to export from the port preferred by the importer. So that's definitely an added benefit.
Thank you, Brendan. That's very helpful. Okay, another question here. Okay, here it is. Do all the records I submit with my VQIP application need to be in English, even the ones from foreign facilities? And I'm going to let David answer that question.
Okay, thank you. So, again, focusing on English. So, FDA has made it pretty clear that records relating to the quality assurance program portion of the application pertaining to the foreign companies will have to be in English. So the answer, I guess, would be yes on that. The VQIP application, again, there would be certain records that could be submitted in a foreign language, but the quality assurance portion of the application must be in English.
Thank you, David. Okay, next question. I saw in the guidance document that VQIP importers would need an FDA product code for their foods. Where do we get that? I'm going to go ahead and let David answer that question again.
The FDA, there's a product code generator actually on the FDA website. You can go on the website and generate this code. It exists already. It's out there. It's been out there a while because these codes are already used for entry. So the product code is based on the type of food and the processing and the packaging of the product itself.
That was extremely helpful. Okay, so I think we have another question coming down. Let's see here. Guys, thank you very much. It's coming through the monitor. Yes, okay, there it is. What's an instance in which the importer of record is not the VQIP importer? And I'm going to let Brendan answer that question.
The U.S. Customs and Border Protection importer of record is typically the owner, purchaser, or a consignee of the food, but can also be a broker licensed by CBP. Since the VQIP guidance state that the importer is whoever brings or causes the food to be brought into the U.S., a customs broker may qualify as the VQIP importer, even though he or she is the importer of record.
Thank you, Brendan. Really great questions from our attendees, and I think I want to jump in and ask David, I have my own question for you. If you were a food importer, would you participate in VQIP?
That is a good question. I think I would wait for any guidance to come out so I could read the fine print of the program. I would assemble a team to review it. I'd get together the company owners or executives. If I have internal quality assurance people, I might bring in my buyers who are dealing with my overseas suppliers, my customs broker, and I would probably have legal counsel involved to help me make that decision. And then I think in the end, if I decided that I would participate, I'd probably wait a year or two after the program is actually implemented to see how others are faring with it. Good intentions don't always have good results. So I tread lightly until evidence shows the program would work for my own company.
Thank you, David. Well, I'd like to go ahead and conclude our session today. Thank you, David Linares and Brendan Sampson. And I thank all of the attendees for joining us today. Have a great day and goodbye.